the forgotten experiment that forged the Soviet war machine. Picture this. April 16, 1922. A remote German military base, 140 kilometers south of Moscow. German officers are training Soviet tank crews. German engineers are designing Soviet chemical weapons. The Treaty of Versailles banned Germany from having an army. Yet here they are, building the war machine that will crush them in 20 years. How? What you're about to discover will completely change how you think about World War II, the Cold War, and modern military alliances. This is the story of the Weimar Soviet military collaboration, the most consequential secret partnership in modern history that virtually no one knows about. Here's the kicker. While everyone thinks the Soviet military miracle started with Stalin's industrialization, the truth is far more calculated. Between 1922 and 1933, Germany and Russia's worn ideological enemies ran joint military experiments that revolutionized modern warfare. The Nazis learned blitzkrieg tactics. The Soviets learned armored warfare, and both learned how to manufacture death at industrial scale. These same tactics aren't just history. They're being used right now by tech companies, startups, and nations competing for dominance. Tesla's manufacturing philosophy, straight from Soviet production principles tested in these secret bases. China's military modernization strategy, a carbon copy of how Russia weaponized German expertise, Silicon Valley's concept of talent acquisition at any cost. That's literally what this operation was about. Most people have never even heard of this, while Operation Paperclip America recruiting Nazi scientists after World War II is famous. This program was bigger, earlier, and shaped the outcome of the war itself. The tactics I'm about to reveal helped create the most powerful land army in human history. And then, in a twist of historical irony, helped destroy the very nation that taught them. But let's rewind for a moment. Why would communist Russia partner with capitalist Germany? And why would Germany risk everything to train their future enemy? In 1919, Germany was destroyed. The Treaty of Versailles stripped them of their military. No tanks, no aircraft, no chemical weapons, army limited to 100,000 men. The Western powers were monitoring every factory, every barracks. If Germany violated the treaty, France would invade. Their military traditions, Prussian excellence, engineering superiority faced extinction. Russia had the opposite problem. They'd won their civil war but had nothing. Their military was primitive. Agricultural equipment from the 1800s. Officers who learned tactics by reading translated French manuals. They'd just watched Germany nearly defeat all of Europe with modern combined arms warfare. They were desperate to learn, but the Western powers had isolated them completely due to Bolshevik ideology. Imagine being a German general in 1921. You've commanded millions. You understand mechanized warfare better than anyone on earth. Now you're prohibited from even talking about tanks. Or imagine being a Soviet commander. You defeated the White Army, but you know that when the real war comes, your peasant army will be slaughtered by any modern military force. But here's what the Western powers didn't understand. Desperation plus complementary needs creates alliances that transcend ideology. Germany had expertise, but no space to practice. Russia had vast territory, but no expertise. The equation was simple, but here's where it gets crazy: the scale and sophistication of what they built. The program was called Special Group R, and the numbers are staggering. For major facilities hidden deep in Soviet territory, Lipetsk Air Base for fighter pilot training, Kama Tank School near Kazanyas, an entire tank training facility, Tomka Artillery Range for chemical weapons testing, Vyvupol for aircraft design and production. While Britain and France sent inspectors to German factories, Germany was testing tanks in Russia. While the League of Nations monitored German military spending, German officers were commanding Soviet units in war games. Between 1926 and 1933, over 120 German pilots trained at Lipetsk, the Kama facility, tested tank prototypes that would later become the Panzer III and IV. The chemical weapons program at Tomka tested agents that killed more efficiently than anything used in World War I. Here's the comparison that should terrify you. Operation Paperclip America's famous recruitment of Nazi scientists after World War II involved about 1,600 German specialists over 14 years. Special Group are involved over 2,200 German military personnel in just 11 years. That's more than the entire population of some Eastern European towns being evacuated for training exercises. Imagine being one of those German instructors. You arrive at Kama in 1928. You're teaching Soviet officers how to coordinate tank movements, how to break through defensive lines, how to maintain supply chains during rapid advances. You're literally writing the manual for armored warfare. And you must know that one day these same officers might use these tactics against your homeland. The Soviets absorbed everything. German tactical doctrine, German engineering standards, German officer training methodology. But they didn't just copy, they adapted. They took German precision and married it to Soviet mass production philosophy. They took German tactical excellence and scaled it to armies of millions. But the most remarkable part wasn't the numbers, it was what happened to the knowledge. The collaboration followed 5 core principles that explain both its success and its modern relevance. Call it the 5 principles of asymmetric knowledge transfer. Both sides kept the program absolutely secret. German politicians didn't know the full scope. Soviet leadership revealed details only on a need-to-know basis. Officers participating were sworn to secrecy under penalty of death. This wasn't just operational security, it was existential. If France discovered the extent of German rearmament, they'd invade. If anti-Bolshevik Russians learned about German cooperation, it would spark internal revolt. This principle is being used today by every major tech company. When Apple develops new products, teams don't know what other teams are building. When SpaceX tests new rocket technology, even employees are compartmentalized. Extreme secrecy enables extreme innovation because it eliminates interference, second-guessing, and political constraints. At Lipitz, German pilots tested dive-bombing techniques that would later devastate Poland. They developed the tactical air support doctrine that made blitzkrieg possible. But conventional military doctrine said dive bombers were suicidal. They'd be shot down by anti-aircraft fire. In secret, away from traditional military brass, they proved otherwise. They couldn't have done this under the scrutiny of Versailles inspectors or conservative German generals. Here's what makes this even more incredible: the unintended consequences neither side anticipated. Here's what most people don't know. The officers who trained at these facilities became the core leadership of both armies in World War II. On the German side, Heinz Guderian, architect of Blitzkrieg and Germany's greatest tank commander, used principles tested at Ernst Udet, head of the Luftwaffe's technical development, learned dive bombing at Lipetsk, Model, Monstein, Blomberg, names that defined German military excellence, all connected to the program. On the Soviet side, Mikhail Tukhachevsky, creator of deep battle doctrine that defeated Germany, absorbed German combined arms theory and then evolved it beyond what the Germans imagined. Georgy Zhukov, the general who took Berlin, studied German mechanized warfare principles at Kama facilities. Konstantin Rokossovsky, Ivan Konev, the marshals who crushed army groups, are all influenced by this collaboration. While everyone thinks Germany and Russia were always enemies, the truth is they were partners in creating modern warfare. Then they used those same innovations to destroy each other. Between 1941 and 1945, over 27 million Soviets died. Over 5 million Germans, they died using tactics both sides developed together. Here's the darkest irony. Stalin purged Tukhachevsky and most officers connected to the German collaboration in 1937-38, fearing they were German spies. He executed the very officers who understood modern warfare best. This nearly cost Russia the war. By 1942, when Germany was winning, Stalin was forced to rehabilitate the doctrine and tactics of the men he'd murdered because they worked. But there's another angle to this story that completely changes how we understand the Cold War. When World War II ended, both America and Russia scrambled to capture German military expertise, apparavents, paperclip versus Soviet equivalent operations. But Russia had a 20-year head start. They already understood German methodology. They'd already integrated German engineering into their military-industrial complex. American intelligence discovered in 1946 that Soviet tank design bureaus still used organizational structures copied from the German teams at Kama. The operation had consequences that went far beyond World War II. The military-industrial complex that won the Cold War was forged in these secret bases, the intercontinental ballistic missiles that defined nuclear deterrence, designed by Soviet engineers who'd absorbed German systematic R&D methodology from the 1920s collaboration. The T-34 tank that military historians call the best tank of World War II. Its design philosophy came directly from German instruction on armor, mobility, and mass production. Here's the paradox nobody talks about. Hitler terminated the collaboration in 1933 when he took power because he saw communism as existential enemy. That decision might have cost Germany the war. By 1933, German officers understood Soviet industrial capacity, Soviet strategic thinking, Soviet operational territory. They threw away that institutional knowledge. When Germany invaded in 1941, they were shocked by Soviet production capacity, by the quality of Soviet tanks, by Soviet operational doctrine. This completely changes how we understand strategic partnerships. The most valuable alliances aren't with ideological friends. They're with complementary capabilities, regardless of ideology. Germany and Russia hated each other's systems, but needed each other's strengths. The partnership ended, but the knowledge transfer was permanent and asymmetric. Here's the part that changes everything. These Cold War intelligence tactics aren't just historical curiosities. They're being used right now by the biggest companies and nations on Earth. Take China's military modernization. For the past 30 years, China has run the exact same playbook: partner with technologically superior nations, absorb their expertise, then surpass them. They've collaborated with Russia on fighter jet design while simultaneously developing indigenous aircraft that compete with Russian exports. They've partnered with European aerospace companies on civilian aviation while using that knowledge for military applications. This is Soviet principle number 1. Extreme simplification at scale. Combined with systematic knowledge absorption, look at SpaceX's relationship with NASA. Elon Musk has explicitly studied Soviet rocket design philosophy. SpaceX doesn't try to make the most sophisticated rockets. They make rockets that can be manufactured at scale with acceptable quality. The Raptor engine isn't the most advanced ever designed, it's the most advanced that can be mass-produced. Sound familiar? That's the exact principle Soviet engineers learned from Germans at Tomka. Optimize for production volume, not individual unit perfection. Tesla's Gigafactory approach is pure Soviet principle number 2. Vertical integration at unprecedented scale. The Soviet Union learned from German systematic planning that if you control the entire supply chain, you can move faster than competitors who depend on external suppliers. Tesla manufactures batteries, motors, electronics, even seats in-house. This was considered insane by automotive industry standards, until it gave them a 5-year manufacturing lead over traditional car makers. Silicon Valley's talent acquisition at any cost is essentially Special Group R for the tech age. When Google acquires a small startup for $100 million, they're not buying the product, they're buying the knowledge in engineers' heads. When Facebook hires away Instagram's team, they're doing knowledge transfer. This is exactly how Soviet military academies operated. Identify expertise clusters, acquire them regardless of cost, integrate them into your system. The principle of move fast and break things comes directly from Soviet operational doctrine, learned during the collaboration. Traditional German military planning was meticulous and slow. Soviet officers realized that in modern warfare, the side that acts faster wins even. If the action is imperfect, blitzkrieg itself was this principle. Move so fast the enemy can't respond, accept losses, maintain momentum. Mark Zuckerberg didn't invent this. He rediscovered a principle Soviet generals learned from German instructors in 1928. By the way, when I was researching this collaboration, Robert Corum's biography, Boyd, the fighter pilot, who changed the art of war, completely connected the dots on why these asymmetric strategies dominate. Boyd's OODA loop concept, direct descendant of this Soviet-German doctrine. I'll drop a link in the description if you want that deeper context. Why Combinator's batch system train hundreds of startups, simultaneously using standardized methodologies, the Kama Tank School for Entrepreneurs. Standardized training that can be delivered at scale, creating armies of founders who share common tactical doctrine. Paul Graham has explicitly written about how founder training should work like military academies. He's right, but the best military academy model was created in Soviet Russia with German expertise. Today, as we watch the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we can see these exact patterns playing out. Russia isn't trying to match NATO in technological sophistication. They're using principle number 1, extreme simplification for mass production. Their tanks aren't as advanced as American Abrams, but they can produce them 10x faster. Their artillery isn't precision-guided, but they fire 20,000 shells per day while Ukraine fires 2,000. This is the exact doctrine they learned from Germans a century ago. Quantity has a quality all its own. China's Belt and Road Initiative, that's updated Soviet strategic influence from the 1920s. Collaboration model, create dependencies through infrastructure investment and technology transfer, then exploit those dependencies for strategic advantage. China builds ports in Africa, trains local operators, integrates them into Chinese supply chains. Exact same model as Russia and Germany, building joint military facilities and creating mutual dependencies. The current US-China tech war over semiconductors, AI, and quantum computing is Special Group R at civilizational scale. Both sides are trying to acquire the other's expertise while preventing knowledge transfer in the opposite direction. Export controls, talent recruitment, restrictions, university partnership bans. These are attempts to prevent what happened between Germany and Russia, asymmetric knowledge transfer that permanently shifts the balance of power. But perhaps the most important lesson is what this reveals about strategic thinking itself. The real lesson here isn't about Germany or Russia or even World War II. It's about asymmetric knowledge transfer as the ultimate strategic weapon. In every domain, military, business, technology, geopolitics, the winner isn't who has the most resources now. The winner is who can acquire and deploy knowledge faster than competitors can respond. Germany had expertise but no laboratory. Russia had laboratory but no expertise. Together they created something neither could achieve alone. Then Russia kept the knowledge while Germany lost access. That asymmetry determined the outcome of the largest war in human history. But there's a darker side we need to acknowledge. This collaboration killed millions. The tank tactics perfected at Kama destroyed Warsaw, Stalingrad, Berlin. The dive bombing techniques from Lipetsk leveled Rotterdam, Coventry, Dresden. The The chemical weapons tested at Tomkathane Fili never used in World War II, but the knowledge persisted. Were the German officers who taught Soviet tank commanders responsible for the T-34s that killed their own soldiers? Were Soviet officers who learned from Germans complicit in Nazi atrocities enabled by superior military doctrine? There's no clean answer. Strategy operates beyond morality. Effectiveness is measured in outcomes, not ethics. We've seen this pattern before, and we'll see it again. America and Soviet Russia allies against Germany, then enemies for 45 years. America and China partners in manufacturing, now competitors for global dominance. Strategic partnerships are temporary. Knowledge transfer is permanent. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The nation that masters knowledge acquisition regardless of source, regardless of ideologies wins. The nation that blocks knowledge flow or clings to ideological purity loses. This was true in 1922. It's true today. As we move into an era of AI, quantum computing, and bioengineering, these principles become even more relevant. The question isn't if nations and companies will form strategic partnerships with ideological opponents to acquire critical knowledge. The question is, when, and by whom? Right now, somewhere, engineers and scientists from competing nations are collaborating on breakthrough technologies their governments barely know about. In 20 years, those collaborations will determine which nations lead and which nations follow. The terrifying part is that the participants, just like those German officers at Kama, probably can't imagine the ultimate consequences of what they're building. Perhaps the most important lesson is this: the most dangerous thing you can teach is competence. Germany taught Russia how to win wars. Russia used that competence to destroy Germany. Today's partnerships will create tomorrow's competitors. Knowledge transfer is irreversible. Choose your students carefully. So what do you think about this forgotten collaboration? Are you surprised that ideological enemies created modern warfare together? How do you feel about the moral complexities should those German instructors have refused, knowing their students might use this knowledge against them? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you seen these patterns playing out in business or technology today? Do you think strategic partnerships with competitors can ever be sustainable long-term? And what other secret collaborations do you think shaped our world? If you found this as fascinating as I did, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're constantly uncovering hidden patterns from history that explain how power really works today. Trust me, there are plenty more secrets where this came from. Stories about how seemingly weak nations became superpowers, how ideological enemies became allies, how knowledge transfer changed the course of civilization. You won't want to miss them. The next time you see a startup partnering with a tech giant, or hear about Chinese students at American universities, or watch companies collaborating with competitors, remember those German officers at Kama Tank School. They thought they were just training. They were forging the weapon that would destroy them. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.